Hi guys, my name's Kelvin White and welcome to Ultimate Tropicals. So if you've been following this video series, you would have saw that we covered the plant journey from Indonesia into the UK. Then we looked at the unboxing and dealing with any rotten or decaying roots or leaves. Then we soaked them in a Super Thrive and distilled water solution for a few days for them to recover. In the next video, we potted them up into pure perlite to give the roots a chance to regenerate and get strong again after the rigorous cleansing process that they go through before export. And in the last video we took a look at the actual potting up and the type of soil that we would use for our aroids. So the next logical step now would be to look after them during their acclimation period. So what I'm going to cover off today in this video is actually the watering of the plants. Now, watering is probably one of the most discussed and debated subjects of all within the rare tropical world. Now, I'm certainly not going to be saying to you this is how you should be watering your plants, but what I will do is I'll show you two different options, if you like. One option is what I use here in the greenhouse, and the other option is what I use in my home collection. The difference between the two is, one is very enclosed with high humidity and the other one is like a home environment. So as I say, I'll cover the two and then you can come to your own conclusion what solution would be best for your own plants. Okay, so let's dive in and take a look. Now that we're inside the greenhouse, let's try and explain a little bit further about this whole watering issue. There are so many different complex factors that go into the amount of water that you actually give your plants. Now, one of the first ones, of course, if you can see, is light. Now, in this greenhouse, which is 10 by 8, it actually has 7 Sansi grow lights. They're each 36 watts and they're on for a period of 12 hours every day. These plants do get an enormous amount of light. And of course, this is a big factor in how much we're going to water them. The other factor to take into consideration, of course, is the soil, which we talked about in the last video. It needs to be extremely well draining, but at the same time, it does need to retain some moisture and some nutrients for your plants to survive. The other element to take into consideration is humidity, because that will be the governing factor on how fast your plants dry out, and that to be taken into consideration with whatever you use as a fan to distribute the air, which of course is very important in an enclosed space. Now at the moment you'll see the humidity over the last 24 hours has actually been a high of 89, a low of 74, and then the temperature is ranged between a low of 22.6 and a high of 25.6. And that most of the plants that we feature here are epiphytes, and even the terrestrial plants used to receiving copious amounts of rainwater. That rainwater will run off them very, very quickly. So none of the plants really are spending any time at all, certainly with their feet in the water. Okay, so I will always water the plants from the top. Okay, so I've already explained about the orchid pots and why I use them. And you can see on here, it's a fantastic root system going on here. And because we have the clear plastic pots, we can see when the water is draining through. We want to make sure it's all dripping out the bottom. In addition to the vents around the side, we also have this ridge at the bottom to ensure that it's never going to be standing in water. Now with the anthuriums, I generally go with a sphagnum moss coating on top of them, and generally when I water them I'll just rough that up a tiny bit just to make sure that the air is able to get through and it's not sort of compacted down too tight. So in this case we've got a Magnificum. This is its first UK leaf and a really nice healthy plant. And this is one of the ones that will be on sale in just a couple of weeks' time. Now here in this greenhouse, these plants get watered pretty much every 2 days. Not exactly, they'll get watered Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. A little bit longer because I'm not actually out here at the weekend, but generally speaking 3 times a week in this type of environment. If we make the comparison to my home environment, that's my home office. Now it's certainly not practical to sit in there with this amount of light, and certainly not in 84% humidity. It will be impossible to do any work. Many of you have got indoor greenhouses, albeit maybe a bit smaller than this one, but the principle will be the same. Now those of you that are trying to grow them from home, maybe in cabinets or just an open in your room, then of course there's going to have to be some compromises made, because it is your living environment and it's not specifically set up just for plants. Well, it may be in case of some of you, but I guess for most it won't be. Now, in my home office environment, I use 3 of these Sansi lights, and that lights up an IKEA display unit, which is about 1.5 meters long. It's floor to ceiling, and I find that quite sufficient. The temperature in there in the summer does actually go up to 26, 27, maybe even 28 degrees, when the temperature has to be controlled, like this time of year now, autumn and winter. It's set at a minimum of 21 degrees, so it doesn't ever drop below that, but on most days it will stay around about 21, 22, something like that. The relative humidity in there will be somewhere between 50 and 65%. I mean, I do have a humidifier running 24/7 in there, but that's pretty much where it will stay. I have an oscillating fan that goes 24/7, exactly the same as I do in here, and that will ensure that we've got adequate airflow. If we don't have that, of course, then we're going to start getting issues with fungus. Now, in that environment, I water the plants. In the summer, I was doing it about every 3 days, and now I've dropped off, and it's probably about every 4 days now. The temperature's dropped a little bit. Now, I do have a moisture meter. However, I don't find them to be particularly accurate when it comes to this type of soil mix that I use, simply because it does tend to have quite a few air pockets and it doesn't really give a true reading. Now, with experience, I can touch it with my finger and I sort of know when it's going to be ready for watering. Now, I don't ever let them dry out. I know a lot of folk use this system where, you know, they'll let the top 2 inches dry out. I don't do that. I don't think Anthurium or Philodendron should ever dry out. I think it should always be damp. That's in my experience. And as I've said before, I don't think it's how much you water. I really do think it's a case of how quickly do they drain and do they not stand in water. Now, I know of some collectors that do actually keep them in trays full of water. I've never tried that. But obviously it must work for them. So like I said, this is really just to share my experience and give you some idea of what I do in 2 different environments. But you know, it will come down to your own experience and a bit of trialing, testing as to what works for you. All I can say is that the plants here certainly, you know, I've quite a few of them, and they all certainly thrive in these conditions. And certainly watering every 2 days seems to have no ill effect on them whatsoever. Hopefully that's useful. By all means, post your comments below on, you know, whatever system you use and how you find that works for you. And obviously, the more comments we have, the more of use it will be for folk that are trying out different solutions. Okay, until the next time. Bye for now.